Welcome back to the TM Podcast. I know there's been a slight delay in posting, but I've been exceptionally busy with my new job and some other shit that I'm sure that you don't care about. I was going to record an episode on Jeff the Killer, the creepypasta, for the Patreon, but like I mentioned in the first one, that website is absolute trash, and each time I try to go there for stories, I get like 15 pop-ups and get redirected to different websites and all kind of stuff. Which is kind of sad because that used to be a great place to go for scary stories. So instead of that, today I'll do an episode on Elisa Lam. But first, I'd like to thank one of the sponsors of this podcast, MyMedic.com. MyMedic makes the best first aid kits on the planet. They're the one-stop destination for all of your medical gear needs. Their kits are designed for everyone. Home, car, work, specific activity, they've got it covered. Their supplies have been tested by experts, and their goal is to keep you prepared while you're out doing what you love. If you want or need a first aid kit, please go check them out by using my link in the description of this post. So, the story of Elisa Lam is one that has been done over and over and over, but people are still undecided on what and who led to her unfortunate death. Elisa was born on April 30th, 1991. Her parents were immigrants of Hong Kong who found success in Canada opening their own restaurant. Elisa was known to have a good group of friends and by all reports was a nice young woman with interest in literature and fashion. There isn't much detail on her childhood, but I can only imagine it was relatively normal, as this story has been told a million times, and if something shitty had been going on, it would have been brought up by now. She enrolled in the University of British Columbia after high school, but it isn't clear what she intended to study. She probably would have went in the direction of the fashion or literature since she was into those things, obviously. And she started and maintained a blog for a while that documented her favorite books as well as her favorite fashion trends at the time. It also let us into her mind a little as she posted a few things that hinted that she was dealing with depression and other issues, such as one post that states she felt utterly directionless and lost, and another that implied that she kept up a fake persona around her friends. A lot of people with mental illnesses do that because they're either afraid to talk about how they feel because they think they'll be judged for it, or because they use their friends as a support system and they don't want to ruin that with the negativity of their issues. Her blog is still up today on Blogspot and it's named Ether Fields. She eventually abandoned that and made a Tumblr and posted essentially the same things on there. On her blog, she posted about having some issues with headaches and dizziness and was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. Her social media posts reflect that she was having a rough time with all of it, and she even said at one point, quote, "I've spent the last 2 days in bed hating myself." At some point, she decided that she was going to do some traveling, possibly to free her mind. She wanted to travel alone on the West Coast, and in 2013, she did not register for classes for the start of the year and began her adventure. She would use city buses and trains to get from place to place and stay in small hotels along the way. She would stay in touch with her parents regularly. She made a stop at the San Diego Zoo and posted pictures online, and then on January 26, 2013, she arrived in Los Angeles. She booked a 3-night stay at the Cecil Hotel. Now, this entire story's mystery and creepiness is focused on this element of her story. The Cecil Hotel, which is now known as the Stay on Main, is one of, if not the, most infamous hotels in Los Angeles or even the U.S. It has a terrible history of guests and suicide and is believed to be terribly haunted. The Cecil Hotel opened in 1927 at 640 Main Street in Los Angeles. When it opened, it was incredibly nice and boasted its marble lobby and 700 rooms. It stayed intact throughout the Great Depression, but the areas around it fell into despair, and by 1940, there were an estimated 10,000 homeless people within a 4-mile radius. The area near the hotel is part of the area that's known as Skid Row. If you've ever seen that area, I recommend staying away from it. I've only been around it one time, and it's almost like an entirely different world. Homeless people and drug use just out in the open make it seem like a movie about the end of the world or something. But along with the Great Depression, an alarming amount of strange things have happened in this hotel's history. The first reported suicide was in 1931. A man named W.K. Norton took poison pills and ended his life and started a trend that would lead to so many suicides that the locals gave the hotel the nickname the Suicide instead of the Cecil. One notably intense suicide there was when a woman jumped out of a window and actually landed on an older man below, killing them both, which is so sad. That poor guy was just minding his own business. On top of the suicides, the hotel became known as a meeting place for prostitutes and adulterers, and you can see that this once wonderful place had essentially become a 700-room trap house. In the 1940s, Elizabeth Short was spotted there just a few days before her death in the hotel's bar. If you're unfamiliar with her, go listen to my episode on the Black Dahlia murder. Rumors of the hotel being cursed weren't helped by the fact that even the residents that didn't kill themselves or die were just as vile as the things going on around them. For example, one of the most notable guests in the hotel's history was the serial killer Richard Ramirez, or more commonly known as the Night Stalker. I have an entire episode lined up for him, but to give you a hint on how shitty this place was at the time of his stay, he used to go out killing and come back to the hotel covered in blood and just throw his clothes away in the back dumpster and just go to his room in his underwear. And no hotel staff ever even reported Ramirez at all for being strange or suspicious. Another notable guest was Austrian serial killer Jack Unterweger. He killed several prostitutes there, but was eventually caught and killed himself right after he was convicted. So back to Elisa. She had booked a room there that was shared, meaning that she wasn't the only one there. It seems a little weird, but I assume it made the room super cheap or something. But pretty quickly, she had to be put into another room because the other people in the room complained to the hotel that Elisa had been acting, quote, very odd. I couldn't find on what they even meant by that, but if you're staying in a shitty hotel like that near one of the worst places in the United States, I feel like you'd have to be acting very strange to get that complaint. Like I said earlier, she had stayed in constant contact with her parents on her vacation, but on the day that she was supposed to check out, her parents didn't hear from her. They called the hotel to see if she was okay, but they couldn't locate her, and she had not checked out. They then called the police, and the search began. Hotel staff had said that they remember seeing her that day, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. A local bookstore manager nearby told police that she had seen her and she was actually looking for books and gifts to take back home to her family. The manager said she seemed normal and friendly, and the police searched her room and even brought in dogs to sniff for her, but they couldn't find anything inside or outside of the hotel. A week went by with no new information, and the media picked up the story in hopes of finding her nearby. They posted flyers in the area and posted online, but had no luck. After another week went by, the police posted a video online that was the last known footage of her from the hotel's surveillance cameras. And once this video was posted, it gained the attention of the entire world. The video wasn't like the normal last seen type footage. It wasn't her walking around doing normal things or eating or talking to another guest, but it was incredibly strange and eerie. Obviously, you can't see the video, so I'll try to describe it the best I can, and you can either pause right now and go watch it, or watch it later. She can be seen walking into an elevator and then pushing the button for several floors at once in a very specific order. Pretty much all the buttons of the floors in one row were pushed, and it looks very deliberate. But then, the elevator doors don't close. She steps out to see if someone might have pressed the button on the outside, but no one seemed to be there. So she then backed into the corner of the elevator as if to hide from someone and waited. She pressed the buttons again and the doors still don't close. She walks slowly out of the doors and then creepily sidesteps to one side and then slowly comes back in and starts making the weirdest fucking hand signals that I've ever seen that you can barely see through the doors. Several moments go by, and while the doors are still open, she creeps back out of frame. Some time passes, and then you see the elevator doors close and then open again, and she's no longer there. So the video freaked everyone, including myself, out the first time we saw it, and if you see it without any context at all, you would think that she might be gesturing towards someone, or you may, like many people, think that some haunted hotel creepy shit's going on. The video is shared millions of times, but it doesn't help bring any clarity to the case or her home. In the days following the release, residents of the hotel start complaining about low water pressure and weird tasting dark water. On February 19th, the hotel sends a technician to check out the water tanks on the roof to see what's going on, and you guessed it, he finds the naked, waterlogged, and decaying body of Elisa Lam. Her clothes, watch, and room key are also found in the tank, and she was covered in a sand-like substance. They actually had to cut the tank apart to properly retrieve her body, as the opening on the top of the tank was very small. On February 21st, the coroner's office listed her death as an accidental drowning. There was no evidence of any physical trauma or sexual assault, and the only drugs found in her system were the ones related to the mental illness she had, with the addition of ibuprofen and a sinus medication. She also had a very low amount of alcohol in her system, but nothing that would mean that she was drunk out of her mind or anything like that. Her family filed a suit against the hotel saying that they didn't properly inspect their hotel and make hazards safer or make it to where something like this wasn't possible for their guests. The hotel argued that they weren't at fault, as to get to the roof, they had alarms and other processes in place to keep this from happening, as well as closed hatches on the water tank doors. They said she had to make several conscious decisions and take many specific actions to get where she was and do what she did. And the hotel was not held liable, and the suit was dropped. This element, along with the thought that it was impossible for her to even get on top of the tanks, added tons of confusion to this case. Her body was delivered back to Canada for burial in the next month, and most people forgot about it. Her death is still listed as an accidental drowning, and that's the end of her story essentially, but it really doesn't end there. The mystery of the video, on top of the fact that her Tumblr kept posting after her death, caused the internet to come up with several theories regarding the cause of death. Some are easily dismissed, and some are pretty interesting. For example, the video itself. People think that she was running from someone and trying to hide inside of the elevator, and point to the video being possibly edited, and also say that the police have other unreleased videos of her walking into the hotel with a couple of males in the days leading up to her death. I feel like the withheld video is easily explained. The people that she was with could just be other hotel guests, or even people that stayed in that share room that she was in the first of the story. Even if they weren't, she's a young college girl on a trip to possibly find herself. Who's to say that she didn't meet some friends or possibly hook up with some new people that she had met out? Also, you have to understand that just releasing the footage without being sure that these people are suspects could cause the public to connect the dots that aren't really there and potentially cause harm to those people. And on top of that, they are noted in interviewing everyone that was involved inside the hotel. As for the elevator video, I will admit that it in itself is creepy as fuck, but if you take into account that she was bipolar, and one of the medicines that was not in her toxicology report was her antipsychotic med, it makes a little bit more sense. As someone who does not suffer from that disorder and has no experience with it at all, I wouldn't know that her actions and movements actually line up with typical hallucinations or episodes with her issues. In her mind, she may have actually been running or hiding from something that she thought was there, but wasn't, which is really sad and terrifying. Others point to this video as it parallels the actions in a 2005 movie named Dark Water that was a remake of a Japanese film with the same name. In that movie, a mother and daughter move into a building and the water runs dark and the elevator malfunctions. All of this leads them to a water tank on the roof of the building where they discover the body of a missing girl inside that had been haunting the place. Some people think that the original movie in 1996 was about a real ghost and that Elisa's death was because she was being haunted by that same ghost and it forced her to get into the tank. But you have to remember that correlation doesn't always mean causation. And you also have to believe in ghosts for that theory to work. Another theory is that secret Illuminati members actually murdered her on purpose to spread tuberculosis to the lower class in Skid Row. It sounds funny to say out loud, but there actually was a TB outbreak in Skid Row during this time, but she was tested for it and it came back negative. Another interesting fact about that is that the name of the test performed to check for TB is called the Lam Elisa. That's some weird shit for sure, but the test was made in 2009 and actually stands for a bunch of huge words that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. And even if that was a goal of everything though, you would think that if the Illuminati were as real and powerful as people tend to think that they are, They could do that a lot easier than using a random Canadian tourist. Like, why not just use a regular homeless person in that situation? But anyways, some people believe that the pathologist report is wrong and she was murdered, but there is no real evidence to support it. Some people say that the amount of time that she was in the tank would allow for the evidence of drugs that could have been in her system to dissolve. But keep in mind that on one side of the argument are several individuals that went to school for a very specific thing and have years and years of experience, and on the other side are people whose only medical knowledge is TV and unresearched articles. What about her Tumblr post after her death? Well, this one is probably the easiest to explain, as she frequently used the queue feature that automatically posts for you when you don't, just to keep your feed going. On top of that, she posted in the days leading up to her death that she had actually lost her phone. That and the auto posts were all the same types of things that she shared normally, so it isn't like someone stole her phone just to post the same shit she regularly posted. What about the hotel's claim of it being very hard to do what she did, as well as everyone who thinks she was murdered pointing to this as the reason someone else had to do it? Unfortunately, with about 10 seconds of research, you can find a video posted online of a YouTube user actually visiting the hotel and very, very easily using a fire escape to get onto the roof, as well as climb another small building using open stairs to get right above the water tanks. Not only that, but once he gets up there, it's basically one small jump down to get right on top of that, and even dumber than that is that 2 of the 4 hatches on top of the water tanks are wide open, unlike the claim of the hotel that they always stay closed. As far as the paranormal element of this, that would require you to remove all of the real world logic out of it and look at it in a completely different way. I only bring it up because people tend to point to her behavior in the elevator as proof that she was playing the quote elevator game, which is something like Bloody Mary or some other type of weird urban legend like thing where you're supposed to go in an elevator and push certain buttons, and the end result is being on another plane of existence where you're the only person alive. Like I said, if that's the cause of death you're looking for, that's a lot more homework that you're going to have to do on your own, as I approach this in a completely different way. There was another death in a similar fashion in the following years in Mexico, where an aspiring 27-year-old actress named Carmen Yarira Esparza Noriega was found dead in a water tank. But the cause of her death there was linked to her ex-boyfriend and is believed to be an obvious murder. The bad part about that one is that she was in the water tank for around 11 months before she was found, which makes me kind of never want to take a shower in a hotel ever again. The sand-like substance on her clothes and body could easily be sediment in the water tank or on the sides of it, especially if they leave the roof of it open all the time. Personally, I don't believe that it is some wild and crazy conspiracy. It is very sad, but not too crazy to think that she either forgot to take her medicine or just had a breakdown and then had some hallucinations or an episode when the elevator malfunctioned. She probably decided to use the stairs to get to the roof, and when she couldn't get there that way, she just used the fire escape, as it was painfully easy to access. You can see on her social media that she loved to post pictures from the rooftops of places where she stayed, so maybe she went up there to catch some fresh air in hopes that it would ease her mind. Once she was up there, it's very possible that she either A, accidentally fell into the opening of the tank unaware that she couldn't get back out and drowned, or B, intentionally got in and then drowned when she found out she couldn't get out. Even though she had mental issues, I don't believe suicide was her intention. She was not known to be suicidal, but it very well may be possible. She did buy things in that bookstore with the intention of taking them back home to her parents. Her hallucinations may have led her there, and she thought she could hide out, or maybe she decided she didn't want to live anymore, and that was the way she wanted to go. I personally don't think that's the case though, because that's not a very pleasant way to die. I agree with the accidental drowning, as I don't really see any motive for murder. She did say on her social media that there were some creeps around during that time, but I mean, she was in one of the shittiest places in the US, so that's probably pretty common, unfortunately. The only thing that really confuses me about it all is why she would even want to stay in that hotel in the first place. I honestly don't see anything that would lead me to believe that the hotel was trying to cover it up either. It's not impossible for sure, as we've seen in the Kanika Jenkins episode, but the difference here is that the hotel didn't have any reputation to lose. Everyone already knew that weird, wild shit happened there, and it's not like they were protecting their reputation. And you're out of your mind if you think a hotel gives enough of a shit about any of its employees to try to protect them if one of them were to kill a guest. The takeaway from all this is that if you do suffer from some form of mental illness, please go get the help that you need. Always take your medicine and do your best to develop a good support system. If you don't feel like you can bring up your illness or situation to your friends, then they're probably not your friends. But what do you think? Let me know by interacting with any of the posts or emailing me directly at tmpodcast19@gmail.com. I'll start working on something for the Patreon users in the meantime, and as the holiday season comes up, I'm not sure how frequently I'll be posting, but I'll do my best to keep it at least weekly. You guys should be spending time with your friends and family anyways. If you don't have a support system or any real friends to talk to, you can always reach out to me as well. If you'd like to hear paranormal episodes or decide what content I cover on this, head on over to patreon.com/thetmpodcast and become a patron today. But until next time, thank you for listening to the TM Podcast.